Welcome, Zach. What's going on, my man? Thank you so much for coming on the show.
What's up, guys? I appreciate you having me. First time caller, long time listener. You know what I mean?
First time call, long time listen. We haven't heard that, so we appreciate it, man. Nice to meet you as well. You're all over my For You page, and I love it. I love you and your relationship with Tayshia. Do my sister right, which I know you will do, man.
I got you. Yeah, she's a keeper for sure. So we're having some fun doing the
Love
deal.
Love to hear that. But homie, if I can, you're a homie now. Like we talk once, we're homies, okay?
Cool.
Can we get right into the man, the myth, the legend that you are? I want to make sure. I want people to know the real you. I want people to know not just the moments that you had with Tayshia, but who you are before you went on the show, right? We know a little bit about your past. We know what you do now. We know that you're recovered from things that you've done in the past. Can we just start there?
Yeah, 100%. And I appreciate that. I feel like I come on a lot of these and I get a lot of softballs, but no one wants to get beyond that, so I appreciate you saying you really want to get to know me because it's important, right? And I've kind of lived two lives. I grew up right outside of Philly, in South Jersey. And I would tell you that, I was one of 5 kids and I have parents that are still married today and I never wanted for nothing. Like I had a beautiful upbringing, but I had a sheltered upbringing, right? In the sense that I grew up in this little like waspy town and, got a great education and, played sports but like was sheltered, and kind of like lived in this bubble. And in high school, I will say that it was like this dazed to confused experience, right? Like we'd go out and we'd play some sports. And then on the weekends, we'd, get the 12-pack of Natty Light and the flask of Captain Morgan and go out in the woods and belt out classic rock songs and chase.
So you and some of your homies?
Yeah.
Sure, I get it. How sheltered were you? Can you like was it bedtime at like 8 p.m. in middle school? Like explain what shelter was in your household.
If I'm being straightforward, there was no people of color. There was no Black people in my high school, like there was no Jewish people. It was very much like the definition of a waspy town, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. I mean, that's what it was. So for me, I knew that I was always like missing something, like culturally, I knew that I was always missing something in the world. And it was to the fault of no one, other than maybe like, if I look back on my experience, maybe my teachers or even like parents could have done a better job of saying like, it's a big world out there. But I grew up in a way where like, you go to this high school, you go away for college, you come back to this town, you raise your family there and you ride off into the sunset. Like that was my, vision.
Yeah. Cookie cutter.
Yeah. And thank God that I took the path I did, which was, partied my ass off in high school, partied my ass off in college. And, that continued into my early and mid 20s to the point where 27 years old, I'm running around, Camden, New Jersey, like in the middle of the street life, smoking crack, shooting dope, like doing the whole thing. Right.
So I want to know, like, when you were in it, like, did you ever feel like you were in danger with the drugs and everything that you were doing? Like, what were some of the worst things that you experienced when you were addicted?
Yeah, I mean, it got dark. I definitely have some stories. I knew I was in trouble. I'm a diehard Philly sports fan, and I had gone to an Eagles game on a Sunday. My wife, I had been married. My wife at the time, who was kind of like hanging on by a thread, was a school teacher. And I woke up on a Monday morning. At this point, I was hooked on the junk, and she went to school and I woke up and I was dehydrated, but I also knew that I was out of drugs. Like I was out of opiates. And for those of you out there listening that have, let's just put it this way. I wouldn't wish a detox from opiates on my worst enemy, right? It's just the worst feeling in the world. So I woke up and I had no money and I was like, I gotta cop. How am I gonna cop? And you guys will like this one. So I call my homie, you got that, Mike? I call my homie and I say, dude, you gotta take me to the hospital. I think something's going on. I make it up. He takes me to the hospital. I walk into the hospital. I complain about this pain in my side. They take me back. I research gallbladder I tell the doctor my gallbladder hurts. He proceeds to give me the painkillers that I'm searching for. And from that, I went through with the surgery. So I went forward. I got my gallbladder removed.
Voluntarily
Just to get high for a couple more days. So that's the kind of moments you look back on and be like, man, that, and not to mention the dozens of times, and I'm not proud of it, that I drank and drove, right? And,
wow.
The blackouts and the debauchery and all that stuff. I'll never forget. It was 2007. So it was a year after I got out of college. And at this point in my life, I'm partying hard, Thursday through Sunday, kind of drinking, blacking out, doing coke, whatever it is, hanging out with the boys, chasing girls. And, I had my car packed to go down the Jersey Shore for the weekend, which is like, it's whatever, in Jersey, it's an hour away. Everyone, Memorial Day, you go party. And I had this feeling of like days come over me, and I wasn't feeling good for like a week leading up to that. And I told my family, and none of them took me seriously, because at this point I'm drinking so much, like, you're just hungover. And I went out to a club in Philly that night, and I fell over, and the bouncer like picked me up and threw me out of the bar. And the next morning I said, I got to go to like an x-ray place. Something's going on. And the lady comes back in the room, and she's like, sir, you can't move. Right. Like, and at this point I'm like 24 years old, and they found a huge growth on my brain. Wow. And within 24 hours, I'm in the hospital down at UPenn getting this brain tumor cut out of my head. Right. And so
what was going through your mind at that point?
That's the point here. This is the craziest shit about addiction and alcoholism, and like the obsession, which is like, to a normal person lying in that hospital bed, I was never alone. There was so much love. People bringing me cheesesteaks, soft pretzels. I'm watching the Phillies game. Like, I should have been like a pig in shit. Like, I should have been the happiest guy in the world. I lived. Like, it was supposed to be this like heroic moment for Zach. And lying there, I kid you not, for 25 days, learning how to walk, talk, eat, the whole thing, occupational therapy. All I could think about was getting out of that hospital bed and going back to drinking and drugging the way that I wanted to. And now, now I knew that I kind of had this like sob story, or like this kind of like shield that no one could tell me what to do. And so I saw it as like this badge of honor to go do whatever the hell I wanted. And that's when I was really introduced to the opiates. And from there, like, it was like, what are the kids saying today? Like, to the moon. Like, I just took off, and it was no looking back.
It's like you escaped the jaws of death, and now it was like a free for all basically after that.
You said you got addicted to the opiates. Is that some of the pills that you were given for the healing process of the brain tumor that was taken out?
Yeah. I mean, the doctors had no other choice but to give them to me, right? Correct. Like, because I was in so much pain, but there was no education provided to me.
That's crazy, man. The number one killer in the military is not war. It's actually a prescription drug addiction. So that's just, your story is
a huge problem. It's an epidemic in our country, the opiate epidemic.
That's right.
Well, and that was the thing. Like, fast forwarding to this weekend, right? Like with this fundraiser that, we talked a little bit about some of the nonprofit work I'm doing to try and raise some money for people to, go and get some treatment, get some help. But that was one of the brightest moments of my, like, this past weekend was one of the greatest weekends of my life. I can say that wholeheartedly, just from start to finish. I had a woman drive down from Massachusetts that saw me on the show. And we had been emailing or DMing back and forth. And she said to me, you pulled me out of a deep depression. You don't even know what your response meant to me. Drove 3.5 hours just to give me a hug and take a photo, with her dog.
Yeah.
I had another woman the first day come up and hand me a $5,000 check because she just liked what we were doing, and had seen a little bit about my story. So we're raising this money, we're building this community this weekend. And then, like, coming out of the weekend, it occurred to me that we just hosted this event in the middle of New York City at this bougie ass hotel, the Equinox Hotel in Hudson Yards. And they let us, you talk about change and you talk about like growth for our country and just the city of New York. Like they let us set up a table, a booth with our logo, which represents like drug addiction, alcoholism, something that is historically stigmatized. And for 48 straight hours, they allowed us to hang out in front of their hotel with the Pittsburgh Penguins staying there and the Memphis Grizzlies, and Tom Brady's out front on Friday. Like, and they said, do your thing. And to me, like them saying that showed me that we are starting to kind of like open our eyes to some of the problems that our nation is facing, because I believe a lot of what we're seeing, like at the core, is drug addiction and mental illness. You know, like with a lot of the stuff going on in the world today.
What does your wife even think?
Like, what was her involvement in everything with you? You know, as far as her being a support system for you at that time. I mean, what did she think when you were going through all that?
Right. So I'm on the other side of this thing now, and I happen to work in the field of addiction recovery. And one of the things about like family members, whether it was my wife, my parents, or even my best friends or whatever it was, like we're so good at lying and manipulating and hiding and stealing that they don't really know until like they know. And then like everybody kind of knows. So for her, I think there was a lot of sympathy around that episode where I got the gallbladder out. There was a lot of sympathy around the times when like I was hungover as hell and couldn't get out of bed, or like, you know, I was quote unquote sick. But really in my head, I knew I was detoxing. I will tell you that. So the first time, so I got married in 2009, and in June of 2009, and my ex-wife is a saint. You know, Tayshia knows, like she saved my life, right? Like I'm very grateful for her. There's no bad blood. We're not still really in contact, but she's still like friendly with my mom and sister and whatever like that. So we got married in 2009. By 2010 Thanksgiving, I'm in rehab for the first time. My mom and her were out cocktailing. One of my friends like ran up to them and outed me and basically told them what was going on. They came home.
I got to pause.
Go ahead.
Did your ex-wife know that you were abusing drugs while y'all were dating?
No.
Okay.
No, she had no idea.
Wow. Okay.
Like I'll put it this way: like during our wedding, I was high, and like on our honeymoon, I told myself that I was going to detox, which I actually did. But the second I landed back in Philly, like the text went out to the drug dealer. You know, so it was just I was living a lie, and she would say like, "Where's all the money going?" And it was just a new lie every time.
Correct.
But back to, you know, rehab. Like, so my wife, the question was about my wife, and like, so I went to rehab that first time, and I got out of rehab, right? And in rehab, we got a little bit of an education. So for like the families out there listening, like the expectation is that the patient's going to do work on themselves, but the family also needs to work on themselves as well. And my wife did that. So then 2 weeks after I got out of rehab the first time, I relapsed, and she caught me red-handed, and she looked me square in the eye and she said, "I love you, but it's over." And that was the last night I slept in that house. She called her old man. He drove down, and she was the first person in my life to really say like, "Zach, the party's like over." Mm-hmm. And I didn't get sober the next day. Like I had to go out for 8 months and really rip and run. And I told you a little bit about what the end looked like, but she saved my life in the sense that like, I wasn't living under this false hope that she was going to stick around and like this relationship was going to work. I needed that boundary. And so like, and she did it with love. She had to protect herself, which I appreciate.
Definitely so. There's boundaries. What were you going to say, Bryan?
No, I just want to know what the aftermath at that point in your life was. Like once, you know, you never slept in that house again, like, did you fall into a depression? Like what was going on mentally there? Because I mean, I imagine that's got to be tough when your wife tells you that.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people look. This thing can look a lot of different ways. I don't really think I ever suffered from the anxiety or the depression that a lot of people suffer from. Like I believe that I am just kind of like a straight down the middle, like drug addict and alcoholic. So my response to like that is I'm going to go harder and faster, you know? And so I did for the next 8 months. And, I mean, it got ugly, like to your point, like there was some moments there where, you know, I was hanging out in places I shouldn't have been hanging out with people I probably shouldn't have been hanging out with, but you know, here I am. So.
Did anyone ever know that wasn't on drugs about your habit, your drug habit?
Well, people know I love the party. I still love the party,
Well, no,
to
I ain't
this
talking about that, homie.
day.
I'm talking about like when you were on drugs. Did people around you in your circles know that you were on drugs, but they weren't on drugs? Like, did you ever confide in anyone? Is what I'm asking.
I think there was a small handful of people that knew because I was doing drugs with them, but outside of that, it was kind of my secret,
Okay, so, and what I'm asking, what I'm trying to get to is, if someone out there has someone in their life that is abusing drugs and alcohol, how do they like still maintain your trust, like not snitching on you, but then also try to help you?
Well, I think for me, what I've learned over the years is there's a couple ways I answer that question, which is one, it's really hard as a friend or a family member to support someone because there's emotions involved, right? And when you're that emotionally close to someone, it's hard to like not believe them. And that's why it's smart to get a professional involved, right? Like, and I don't see that as snitching. I see that as trying to save someone's life, right? Like
I do as well. I've known people in the military. Military has some people in the military have an issue with this, and our job is to obviously we care and love that person and try to get professional help for them, and they have been able to finagle out of it, and so then they lose that relationship with that person, and it almost feels as if they don't come back to you no more. So I felt if they don't come back to me no more, then who else will they go to? Does that make sense? And so I was just wondering, how do you do it? Do it the right way. So I guess your right way is saying, just seek profession, go to a professional.
Well, I think too, like it just goes back to a lot of things in the world, right? Like I heard my mom saying she loves me. I heard my dad saying she loves me. My response wasn't to acknowledge that, but deep down I felt the love, right? And so for anyone that has someone they love that's struggling, whether it's with drug addiction or something else, like really letting them know that you love them is one of the best things you can do. It's just like, because here's the thing I kind of always tell people, right? Like with heart disease or cancer, right? You go to the doctor and they give you like, you're going to go do chemo, you're going to go do radiation. And the patient says, okay, great. Like I'm going to do all these things because I want to live, right? With this thing, it's a killer just as much as those other diseases.
Sure.
But if I go to a doctor and the doctor says, all right, I want you to go to these support groups. I want you to see this therapist. I want you to see this psychiatrist. I want you to be enrolled in this outpatient program. A lot of times the patient will turn back and say like, well, I don't know about the support group and I'm too busy for the therapist. We start to negotiate with the treatment plan. And that's what's so hard about this whole thing.
Gotcha.
Obviously you went through, everything in rehab and whatnot, like through everything that you learned in rehab, like in retrospect, what were you looking for in the drugs and the alcohol? Like, was that just something that everybody did when you were growing up and you just kind of like joined in, or were you trying to gain some sort of an outlet? Like, what would you say to that?
Oh man, I definitely was trying to fill like a hole in my soul, and I don't know to this day exactly what that was. I know for me, and like even to this day, when like one of the core traits of someone who struggles with drug addiction or alcoholism is that like for me, I'm selfish and I'm self-centered, right? Like I think about myself and I get high and I keep thinking about myself and I don't care about any other people. And that's why it's so important when you come out on the other end of this thing to really be of service and think of other people and try to give back. Because you're not like, if you're thinking about other human beings, you can't possibly be thinking about yourself. And so for me, like in rehab and like, it's kind of a baffling one because I didn't, like I said, like at the outset, like I didn't want for anything. I don't have the trauma, I don't have the molestation. I don't have that stuff from my upbringing, but
that's good for people to hear.
you know, like.
Yeah, I mean, it can happen to anybody.
Yeah, that's
no matter what your background is.
Super good for people to hear, because I think people always associate someone who's addicted to drugs and or alcohol of like having the worst upbringing whatsoever, when we're living proof that that's not the case. What has helped you stay clean? Because we just lost DMX, right? He battled with a lot of drug and alcohols, rest in peace. And what has helped Zach? You know, what has helped you, and what will continue to help you stay clean?
Yeah, that DMX thing rocked me, you know, because it just reminded me of so many of stories of people that I've met just like him that are so talented. And, you know, like at my high school locker room, like DMX fueled that shit for 4 years, you know, it was my place. Like, come on, you know, like, and so for me, like, I like to think I'm the smartest guy in the room, right? But when it came to this thing, I really had to humble myself and understand that I didn't know what the hell I was talking about. And I had to listen to those that had, quite frankly, like come before me and then had recovered and had, you know, a sense of how this thing works. And so now, almost a decade later, you know, God willing, I'll celebrate.
Yeah.
God willing, I'll celebrate 10 in August. You know, like I do a lot of the same shit I did when I first got out of rehab. You know, like I have my support groups and my networks that I lean on. You know, I'm still engaged in therapy, and I'm not ashamed of that. I work out a ton, you know, like that's a big part of my recovery. And I found a purpose, you know, and for me, my purpose was I ended up working in this field and growing a business that helps people. For the next guy, it could be playing music, but you know, it opened my eyes to a world that I didn't even know I existed. Like if you would have told me that Zach Clark, like this, you know, little kid from South Jersey, is in New York City, like doing what he's doing, I would have said you're crazy, you know? Right. And so on the other side of that, I end up going to treatment for 4.5 months. This is the second time that I've been in rehab. And like I had to get punched in the face in many ways, but like first I had to get punched in the face by my addiction, and then like kind of like learn to love myself again. And then what happened for me is I was kind of, you know, injected into this recovery community up in New York City, which New York City is a melting pot, right? So here I am showing up with like 5 months sober from this little town in South Jersey into the bright lights of New York City. I'm like, what the hell happened to my life? And, you know, like when I was in rehab, it was something I kind of like, I started to learn to pray, and like I was looking for a sign and spirituality, and like my counselor at the time made a couple recommendations as to where I could go after rehab. You know, you kind of like, you go to rehab and then you go into like supported living environments. He said, why not New York? And I kind of said like, screw it. Yeah, let's do it. And,
how old were you at this time?
I never looked back. I was 27.
Okay, so 27 at this time. Okay.
And Zach, I just want to take it back. So would you say you were introduced to drugs and alcohol in high school?
Yeah, it was, I would say probably like 6th grade, you know, at a Christmas party, a couple older guys like threw me a beer and I drank it, and, you know.
Gotcha. And when did you, like, along your journey, because obviously that was like in middle school, and then you talked about being 27, like at what point did you feel like, okay, I definitely have an issue?
It's funny you ask, Brian, because I kind of, everyone's got a different experience, right? Kind of like their moment of clarity. And, you know, for me, I don't think I knew. I mean, there's a crazy story behind like my last couple hours of drinking and drugging, to where like my dad kind of like came down to this bank where I was trying to cash one of his checks. And, you know, what happened was he got this phone call on a Saturday morning from the bank teller, basically saying like, you got to get down here. Like, your son's in trouble. He's trying to cash one of your checks. He happened to be in his office. He happened to answer the phone from an unknown caller, right? Mm-hmm. He happened to be 10 minutes away. There was missing person reports like all over the place, and he bolted down there. And for me, like that moment that you're asking about is when he walked into that bank and kind of put his arm on my arm. He's like, son, we're going home. I felt something in that moment that I, like, to this day,
I just got goosebumps.
Right. I can't describe it. Something left me. And that's when I knew, like, all right, this life, I'm done with this life. And he walked me out, and the two guys that I was running around, two drug dealers, were sitting outside the bank, and I kind of like waved to them. They knew, they saw it, and that was the beginning of like, my second life. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. I love that. Thank you for that.
So the bank teller story, it's my greatest story in life. And so what happened was, I get sober, I start this whole new life in New York City. I don't really think about that moment. I mean, I talk about it a lot because it was my like moment of clarity. But then I end up on this crazy show, right? The Bachelorette, and disconnected from the world. And I started to reflect on like how I got to this moment, right? That's one of the things I'm most grateful for. Like really that like looking inward, in addition to falling in love and doing all that stuff, like I really got to think about my life. And when I got out, I made a mission to go find the bank teller, and I went down to the PNC bank where she had been working. Rhonda Jackson is her name. If you go to my Instagram, you can see a post about it. But I walked in that bank. She was still there. I surprised her. I brought her flowers. She's like, "Oh my God, Zach, I remember calling your dad." Like she remembered it.
Wow.
And it was her last week on the job.
Wow.
She was leaving.
Just in time.
Like, yeah, it was nuts. It was nuts.
I love that, bro.
That's
insane. My God.
Yeah.
This is cool. I'm getting like, I really
she
have
like helped save you in a sense, man. That's incredible, man.
You just talked about how people get out of depression. One is their support group. I can't emphasize enough how important that is. So I'm glad you said that. Two, you mentioned working out. Working out is one of the most underutilized antidepressants. And then three,
detox, it's an outlet, yeah.
And then three, you have purpose. Like you literally just hit on 1, 2, and 3 without even knowing it, bro. I love that you said that. And I would love to be there with you at your 10-year celebration, because you're definitely going to make it, man. We know you are.
Almost 10 years, Zach. Again, congratulations on that. It's a hell of a feat.
Thank you.
I want to know what the social life is like now. Does it bother you being around people who are drinking and, maybe doing some type of extracurricular activity on drugs or anything like that? Like, how do you handle those situations when you're out now?
I enjoy it. Like it's tough because my best friend in life up here, a guy by the name of Justin, he hates it. Like he hates being around drunk people. For me, I don't mind it. Like I still go on the bachelor parties. I still do the fantasy football trips. I'll still, go out to a club if like the night calls for that. Because I love people and I love life, So one of my big passions, in addition to like helping people recover, is also recognizing the fact that this life is not a punishment, and I get to do some of the coolest shit out there, and feel good doing it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And does it help?
Punishment. And does it help being around, the people that you do party with? You said you like to party. I mean, obviously they know what you've been through. We know that some people have in their group an enabler who, trying to shove a drink or a shot down their mouth. And, I'm sure that your close circle knows about that and isn't really doing that when you're out in public, and they basically just let you be. Is that the case?
Yeah. You know what I learned about that dude? The one that's trying to get you to drink, they most likely have a problem. Because they're looking for someone to join in on their on their co-sign their bullshit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's facts. Absolutely.
One time, I got to shout out my roommate Connor. We had like a little get together at our apartment, and this one girl was trying to get Connor to drink, and Connor's extremely big on his fitness and body, and he kept saying no, and then she said, "Well, why the hell did you move to downtown Austin if you won't drink?" And like I just kicked her out.
It's like a requisite in downtown Austin.
Like, who the hell says that? So I like that you said that, Zach. They are the ones that probably have the issue right there. I have to ask you, because I'm a mentor with Big Brothers Big Sisters. What would you say to the kids out there that are, that don't have that strength yet? I would say for themselves, and are, they're learning about this stuff. They're going to 6th grade, right? Or higher. What do you say to them?
Yeah, I can't help but recognize that I've been doing this work professionally now for like 8-9 years, and the calls that we're getting, the kids are getting younger and younger. And I kind of say it like to answer that question, I'm going to talk about what I tell my friends right now who are starting to have kids and bring people up in this world, which is that people want to smoke pot, like, and their brains are fully developed. And rather than go have a couple martinis, they want to smoke some bud on a Friday night and they're 29, 32, 38 years old and they don't have a pot, like go for it. Right. Like I don't have any opinion on that shit, but like this whole legalization that's happening with marijuana and, you know, it's becoming more and more socially accepted and these kids are not smoking the same weed that we smoked or I smoked growing up. Like these vapes and these pens. Yeah. So what we're seeing at 12, 13, 14 years old, these kids are getting their hands on this shit and they're taking one hit and the stuff's so strong that they're frying their brain literally with one hit of the shit. And they're ending up in rehab in like a weed induced psychosis. So for me, like what I try to educate the adolescents on is like, just be careful, be mindful, try to understand like what you're getting yourself into. Don't do things that you're getting from places you don't know. Inevitably, people are going to experiment with drugs, right? They're going to. I mean, it's just a sad fact of our world, but like trying to educate them about the dangers of some of the stuff that's out there. I mean, these weed pen, like this shit, it's dangerous. You know, it's going to be dangerous. Yeah.
I always say just try to be your own little leader. You can be a leader yourself. You know, that's something that I always try to say.
I think too, like for me, Mike, just to follow up, like,
yeah, appreciate it.
One of the things, like, cause you asked earlier, or maybe it was Brian, about like why I drank and drugged. And the one thing I do remember about like my adolescence and growing up is I always formulated my answers to suit what I thought you wanted to hear.
Yes.
So if I knew Mike was into basketball, like I would answer my question or try to make myself out to be some kind of like basketball guy. And I knew Brian was into the opera, like I'm going to make my, you know, and so
you're like a people pleaser.
Correct.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So for like the adolescents and the kids growing up, like be yourself, man.
Yes.
Do you.
Yes. Facts. Say it loud. Let the people in the back hear you, man. How, you know, a lot of people when they, like a lot of musicians, when they get off of drugs and or alcohol, they have a hard time when it comes to doing their art. For us, you know, we were on The Bachelor, right? When you got off of doing drugs and alcohol, how was it for you dating? Was it no biggie because you love people, or did your game go down?
I don't know if I ever had game, to be honest.
Stop lying. We saw the show. Stop lying.
Yo, I just laid in the cut until it came to me. Oh man, I had the patience. I'll tell you that. No, so it's a great question. And it's one that, like, in working with guys getting sober, men and women getting so I think they always want to talk about dating, right? And like for me, I'm kind of screwed out the gate because I sit down on a date and it's like, what do you do for work? Well, I work in this. And then like the waiter comes and like I order a club soda, like, all right, what's going on here? So I kind of hit him I'm screwed. But like what I came to realize, and again, like this pertains not just to drinking, but if this person sitting across from me is going to judge me because I don't drink, then I'm out anyway. Because I don't want to be with some, like, so if someone's going to be that judgmental, which we see all the time in this world, like, peace, I'm on to the next one.
Yeah.
On to the next one.
Hey, tell me, man, you're obviously now engaged. How did Tayshia, when you first told her about everything you're telling us now, I mean, how did she take everything?
Yeah, so I took, it was kind of like our first one-on-one, and it was the night portion of the date, and like there was somewhat of a build up to that moment, and I just remember kind of, fielding some questions from the other guys and maybe some producers just about like exactly that, like the fear. And I think like people were expecting me to respond in a way that like, I'm really scared, I'm really nervous, like I don't know how this is going to go, but like
you were super honestly, comfortable, I imagine.
Yeah, because that's
because of the rehab, right?
I like myself. I mean, that's just the truth. Like I like myself. So like fuck. Yes. I mean, I'm that's it.
Yeah, you love yourself. You know who you are. You know who's not for you and who's for you. It's simple as that. I love that.
Like, how do you not drink on the show? What was around being so drunk guys? So I was like, I mean, maybe some dudes got drunk, but I met a lot of really cool guys out there, like good men. I don't know.
No, you do know. It's as simple as that, bro. Like the answer could be simple and to the point and succinct. You love yourself. You know who you are. You know who's for you and who's not for you. So it truly can be that simple. I think that, quite honestly, we make it harder at times. It's like, hey, I don't want to drink. It's that simple, bro. It's that simple. I don't want to. I don't want to do this. Or I do want to do this. So I love it.